Hey, this is Tom, Junkie XL. Welcome to Studio Time with Junkie XL. And of course with some gear. And I want to showcase a few synthesizers that we haven't gotten to. They're not necessarily a group or they have a specific style. They're just very, very, very unique instruments. And I just want to point them out to you. And for starters, there is the Synergy. The Synergy is a synthesizer that was made for a short period of time and was pretty soon overpowered by the next synthesizer that we're going to see later on in this episode, the Yamaha DX7. But it is a very unique synth, and it was developed in the late 70s, and it was primarily very famous for Wendy Carlos, who used this synthesizer for the scores that she worked on, for instance Clockwork Orange and Tron. And she was also a very good programmer, so she made her own sounds. And actually, when you are lucky enough to find these, you find these cartridges, and I'll find them right here. They look very much like the data cartridges that came out in the 80s for the DX7, but also for Roland. And some of these are actually programmed by Wendy Carlos. So I was lucky to get hold of a few of them. And this is actually the synthesizer, and it comes with a K-Pro computer, which was one of the first portable computers that came out that was very steady. And it comes with software to operate this synthesizer. Let's just start up the software. It's just always great to start up really old stuff. Some good old typing, enter. And remember what I said in some of the other episodes? Let's wait a while. This is going to take a while. And the software is going to boot up. And the software that comes with the K-Pro, there we go. Beautiful phosphor green screen. It doesn't get more beautiful than that. You can type any function you want. You want to create a cartridge or load a file. You press 1, and there you go. You can create your own stuff. Escape will take you to another file. If I hit enter a couple of times, it will quit and it goes back to the main menu. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to really try this to the fully potential because there's something wrong with my data cable or with the baud rate of this computer. But eventually we'll get it to work, and we've got some good people looking at it. But the synthesizer is in perfect condition. It works, and at this point I have one of Wendy Carlos' cartridges in there. So let me just play like a few sounds so you have an idea what it is. The synthesizer has a quality of an FM synth, and with the software, and I really hope we can get it to work, you can program really complex sounds. Now, funny enough, the sounds that I just played from Wendy Carlos are not necessarily all that complicated, but apparently if we get the software to work, it will be great for sound design and create really long drones with really complicated envelopes that change the sound. And I'm very much looking forward to get into programming that once we get to the point of getting that properly to work. I'm switching this machine off right now because it takes a lot of power, and you just heard a little pop, and that's what that is. So let us bring us to this side of the room and just really bring out something really unique. This is the PPG Wave 2.2 with the PPG Waveterm. Now, PPG was a company that made synthesizers in the early 80s. Again, pretty soon got overpowered by the DX7, which was way cheaper and it was way more affordable than these boxes. And I just talked to the engineer that constantly helps me keeping this stuff up to date. Of the Waveterm, probably there are only 50 to 75 made, period, worldwide. So this is a very, very, very rare one. And most likely this is one of the 10 or 15 that actually works. The PPG Wave, a few more were sold, around 2,000 maybe of all the PPGs together. And there are probably still like a good 800 or 1,000 working out there in the world. But Waldorf, which was the original company, has just released the VST version of this beautiful synthesizer. So for really a little bit of money, you can really use this synthesizer at home. And it's a wonderful sounding synth. I want to play you a couple of sounds from this synthesizer. What is really unique about the synthesizer, it was the first that used wavetables. And a wavetable is basically a collection of waves in a series that you can modulate and go through. And I will show you that in a second. But let's just go to this wonderful computer here that came with the PPG Wave 2.2 if you bought it as an extra option. And this box is very much, if you want to call it, one of the very first DAWs that was released, besides the Synclavier and the Fairlight. So this is our main screen. And if we leave our main screen, we hear the wonderful sound of the 8-inch floppy. And what does an 8-inch floppy look like? You probably don't even know because you weren't potentially born, or maybe you were. Look at that, an 8-inch floppy drive. And what is really funny is that you could actually still buy them new, completely sealed, from somebody who bought it back in the day, 1981, put it in a shelf and thought, maybe I'm going to sell this in 36 years. And I'm very happy they did that. And actually the K-Pro uses a different format, which is the format that came after that, which is a 5¼ inch. Look at that. Still looks very beautiful. These are actually so well built, they will last a really, really long time. I'm a little scary about the 8-inch ones, but we'll have to see. And these drives are really big MFs, so to speak. Motherfuckers, I'm just going to say it. So they're really big. This is the system drive that's inside. I'm just going to put it back in. I always handle it with a lot of care to make sure it doesn't get damaged. So now that was the whole floppy disk part. Now we enter part 1 of our page 1 of this system. And basically you can make your own wave in this thing, which was back in the day was like insane. And it's still very unique because there are not many programs out there that allow you to make your own wave. And here you can transfer it to the synthesizer and then you can play that wave. But what is unique about this box is that you can not only make one wave, no, you can make 64 waves, send them all to this box, 64 different waves, and then you can morph between those 64 different waves while you're making a sound. And that's very unique, and that's what was really unique about the PPG Wave. So in page 1, you can make your own wave and you can store waves. So let's now get a wave. So let's go to get 12, and there we go. Here we have a wave. Now I can alter the parameters of this wave because here we see a fundamental 2, and then here we see all the harmonics that come with it. So let's now, for instance, say we go to harmonic 3 and, oh sorry, 0.3 that should be. Let's do this again, harmonic 0.3. Which is now set to 0, and I'm going to give it a value, let's say 24. And now you see it's entering an extra harmonic to it, and now I can say compute. That's where things go a little wrong because there's a camera in the way. Compute, and now it will recalculate what that wave would be. Now I can, for instance, say store this wave to spot number 24, and now I can potentially play it on the synthesizer, see what it sounds like. Now this box offers many other functions, so you can completely go overboard, get completely different waves. So this looks completely different. Let's find another one. This looks completely different. So you can really go overboard in how you want to design your waves, send it back to the PPG, and just really make it super, super, super exciting. So let me now show you what a wavetable works like. So if I play one note, we're just now hearing one wave. And there's a nice filter on it, and it's all analog. The wave section is completely digital, but the rest of the synth is completely analog. And we've noticed that a couple of times before, for instance with the Emulator 2, where the sampling heart is digital, but everything else is analog. So I can skip through the wavetables by using this knob. That's the sub oscillator that I can also change. And what's really interesting is that I can now route an envelope or an ADSR to how the wave is going to be chosen by the wave oscillator. So let's now play with this. So you hear this really interesting like skipping effects because the envelope is set up a certain way that it skips really interestingly all between these different waves that are set up on forehand with the Waveterm sent to the PPG, and then you can save them. So very, very, very unique system. It's very crash sensitive. It's also very heavy on the repairs, I have to say. This thing is more at my workbench, more at my tech workbench to get it fixed than it actually is operational in the studio. But nevertheless, the results are so great. I use this a lot on Dark Tower, which I can't play you music of yet. And I used it also a lot on Distance Between Dreams, the Red Bull movie that I made about Ian Walsh, the master trickery server on the really big waves. You should really check that out. It's a really nice movie, and I thought I did a great job on the score. So now let's move back here to the other synth. This is also a really interesting synth. This is the brand is Taisco, and I forgot for a second. There's a Japanese like hi-fi company that did this. It was something like Hitachi or something funky. Maybe somebody in the room can Google that by which company the Taisco is made, and then the Taisco SX-240, and I will at the end of the video correct you what the official company was. It has a really nice big display that you can really read very carefully what you're doing. So this preset is called Moving. And with a really big knob, you can go through the parameters, and you see here the lights on what parameter you are cut off. So I can just now. It's a really nice sounding synth, fully analog, but completely controllable with digital parameters. It's a super, super rare beast, but if you do find them, they're not very expensive. And they're just funny to have. Did anybody found what it was?
I think it's Kawai.
Kawai! That's it, Kawai. And the winner is Kawai. It was not Hitachi. Okay, so we move on to the rack. There are two synthesizers that I haven't touched. And they're part of these three. They're Yamaha synthesizers. Yamaha has always been a secret, like I'm always a secret fan of everything that Yamaha has made. So let's now talk about the TG77. The TG77 is a synthesizer that was, for the first time Yamaha was adding something to their FM synthesis that made them so popular. We'll get to that later, the DX1 and the DX7. So the TG77 does offer the complete functions that the DX7 has, plus way more. You could really do complicated routing and things like that. But what is really interesting about the TG77 is that it added something extra, and that was EWM. And AWM. And AWM was acoustic waveform modulation, and it added little samples to this box, somewhat similar to what the D50 did of Roland. This was a little later than Roland, so it was a sign of the time that all these companies wanted to move into that direction. So you have a full DX7 and you have the waveforms internally, and you can mix and match to make sounds. So it's a really, really great sounding synth. I just want to quickly run you through a few sounds, not too many. And we have no sound because the power went off. So I have to restart this box. I have to go to the right file here. It's loading. Isn't it a beautiful thing? This will take a while. We've heard that before. Okay, we're done. This is the TG77. So again, something that we noticed when we previewed the D50, it has that airy quality to it, and you hear that there's samples in there, but it's really great to combine it with the DX7, so you can layer so many sounds on top of each other. So you can have like a few DX7s on top of one another and then add samples to it, and there are all these routing things that you can do. Great effects processor is in there. It has multiple outputs, and I'm blanking what the keyboard version was. It was something 77, and then it was something SY77 or the SY99. And the SY99, which I have as a keyboard version, but it's in storage, that is the top of the line of that whole series, but they never made a rack-mounted version of that. And it's so big and it's so heavy, so I'd rather stick to the TG77, but it's a really wonderful box and you get really good sounds out of it. Now, in that same line, they topped that concept even more so, around 99, 2000, something like that. So something happened before that. They released a synthesizer that's called the VL1. And the VL1 had a very unique approach to making sound. So I'm just going to switch this thing off and just go over there. So the VL1 is so complicated to program that the initial part of making the source sound, they didn't even make that accessible for the programmer when you bought the synth. You can only access it if you have certain software, which I wasn't even able to get yet. And you need to hook it up like a certain way, and then you can go into it. But it's so scientific that it's impossible to even try to work with it. Now, this is what it does. It basically uses the pressure from blowing into a flute or a trumpet or a trombone or a tuba or a saxophone or a shakuhachi or a pan flute. And there's another one, and that's bowing. So bowing of a string or a bass or a cello or any other instrument. So it found this really complicated way of combining the blowing into a woodwind instrument or any other brass instrument and the string. Now what's interesting with that instrument is that they give you all these options, like the pressure of your mouth on the reed, for instance, or on the mouthpiece of the horn, and then how long the horn is, how long the string instrument is, where you play the bow. It's so complicated what you can program with it. And it was one of the first synthesizers that was actually able to very naturally approach woodwind instruments, trumpets, and string instruments. But obviously, I didn't use it for that. So if you really treat the parameters and you really play with them, you can really make really, really interesting sounds that are completely way out there. So that is what this instrument is. And now I just want to play you quickly a few natural sounds, and then we'll go to another box where I play the sounds that I make with them. So let's just play these sounds. Sounds pretty natural, those sounds. Mind you, this machine was coming out in '94 when samplers were super underdeveloped and they had no way of having that type of expression that this synthesizer has. I'm actually demonstrating this completely the wrong way. If you really want to hear a good demonstration of the VL1 in its natural form, you should definitely Google it, because people have a breath controller, and I have one too. It should be somewhere. Yeah, here it is. I've actually never used it before. Kind of lame, right? I'm doing this tutorial and I have something in my hand that I never used before. But anyway, forget about it. So to really make this thing come alive, you have to use the breath controller and just like almost breathe into it like a woodwind player or a brass player, but then play the notes with this. So in a way, it kind of reminds you of the vocoder that I showed you of Roland and Cork, because it's the same thing. You play a chord and then with the microphone you make it talk and you make it sing. So enough of the VL1. Let's go now to the box that I really want to talk about, which is the EX5R. The EX5R is a flagship that they released somewhere around 2000. And the EX5R combines everything that was great about Yamaha. So it has a fully sampler in there, A3000. It has a fully TG77, or actually I should say the SY99 in there. And it has the VL1 improved in there. So now we have a fully DX7 is in there. All the wave samples that Yamaha ever made are in there. It has a complete VL1 in there, completely improved. And it has a sampler in there, so you can record your own sounds. And you can mix and match everything with each other and just make really, really awesome sounds. So let's go through a couple of sounds that I made on this thing. There are performance knobs on the front where you can control really interesting parameters with. Unfortunately, you can't see in the screen which ones you programmed, so I have to find them on every sound. But the sound is like so unique of this thing, I don't know any synth that sounds anything like it. So let's just play a couple of sounds. This is one I actually used on Mad Max. So for the guys, you know, among you that have seen that movie, it's that whole night scene when they're when everything is dark and bluish. There's this pulse, and it comes from this machine. So, the initial voice when you start programming. Listen to this. Isn't that beautiful? And what does Mr. Junkie XL get out of it? Some growly, nasty shit. This is a really, really amazing box, like really amazing box. It's very hard to program, but once you get into it, it's really, really great. So, okay, now I want to take you to the other side of the room to show you one of the most beautiful synthesizers ever built. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the DX1. I have to be honest about this synthesizer though. This one is not mine. No, it's not. It's a loaner. And who loaned it to me? My friend Hans Zimmer, who had it in his storage, who was not using it, and I was raving with him about the synthesizer, and then he said, my friend, you can borrow the synthesizer because you're actually using it. I'm not using it. So here it is. Let's just move these cartridges out of the way. So this, I would almost say like this was more or less like a prototype synthesizer before they really got it right and they turned it into the DX7. Obviously the DX7 was a massive commercial success, and the cartridges that I have here are actually for the DX7, but they're 100% compatible with this machine. Now the DX7 was always a very, very hard synthesizer to program. Because it had a small display and there was so many menus that you needed to go through. What's really cool about the DX1 is that it basically displays all these parameters for you, so you have a little bit of a grip what you want to do. So I actually already started programming a little bit on this machine. To give you the background, this is an FM synthesizer, frequency modulation. If you watch any of my tutorials with the modular, frequency modulation is a part of that. So you see a few oscillators when one is the carrier and the other one is the modulator, and you could see what you can do with that. So originally this was an electronic piano, but I started editing with it and I got this really soaring, nice, emotional tone out of it. Let me just play it to you. So there's so many things you can do with the sound with this synthesizer. But what's really the heart of it is what algorithm you're going to pick to really work on. So we're now at algorithm 16, where here perfectly displayed is what the algorithm looks like and where there's feedback and where there's not feedback and what the carrier is and what the modulator is. Let's just pick a couple of different algorithms and just let's just see how different that changes the sound. I will never be a great keyboard player, so forgive my mistakes. So you can already tell, like by picking a certain algorithm, it's already gonna change the sound drastically. Like, so now I'm editing the pitch of operator 1. See what happens here. Pretty interesting. Let's go to the second one. Let's change the level of operator 3 that I just edited. What you're now hearing is that really strong feedback that happens in FM synthesis. I can edit that too. Anyway, I don't want to turn this into a course editing for FM synthesis as a tutorial. I just wanted to play you that DX7. And let's see, I do want to play a couple of presets. I have the, let's see, let's put the original, yes, DX7 card in. It is in. So let me play a couple of sounds of the original DX7. Bass, cellos. More strings. Analog synth. Anyway, just a few examples. But it's a really nice sounding synth. And actually the DX1 sounds a whole lot cleaner than the DX7, the original DX7 that came out. Then after that, we got the DX7 II, which was the one that I had. I was able to buy that back in the day in the store. And then you had the DX7 II FD that had a floppy drive. The FD stands for floppy drive. Now the DX7 II had a performance mode where you could combine two DX7s together and do really interesting things with it. The original DX7 did not have that, though the DX1 does have that. So they developed that idea already back in the day and then implemented it way later. The offsprings of the DX7 synths were many. There was a DX27, the DX100, and these you can still get like really, really cheap. Really cheap. And they're an amazing add-on to what you're doing. But obviously there's FM8 of Native Instruments, which is really, really great. You can actually transfer original sounds from the DX7 into the FM8. Obviously you can't do it the other way around because the FM8 has way more parameters. So if you're looking for a very compact budget FM synthesizer you want to use the FM8, or buy a very cheap DX synthesizer that you can find from Yamaha from the 80s, and they're really cheap, believe me. And then the DX7 obviously was the big one, the really good one, and even the DX7 you can pick up for $300–400. So that's okay too. But they're hard to program, so be aware. Thank you for watching this episode. And we'll see you next week on the new episode. And I'm not sure what the subject of that is, but I'll figure that out. Bye.